The scent of new leather and Italian engineering still hung heavy in the air. The Rosso Corsa paint gleamed under the afternoon sun, reflecting my pride like a polished mirror. After years of 16-hour days, sacrificing weekends, and scrimping and saving until it hurt, I finally had it. My Ferrari. Not just any Ferrari, but the one I'd plastered on my bedroom wall as a kid, the one that fueled my late-night study sessions and the countless hours I spent hustling. It represented everything I had worked for, a tangible testament to the fact that hard work, perseverance, and a refusal to give up could turn dreams into reality. John Leonard, a kid from the wrong side of the tracks, now owned a freaking Ferrari. I eased out of the driveway, the purr of the engine a symphony in my ears. I spent so long just imagining this moment, and it was even sweeter than I thought it would be. I wasn't going to go anywhere crazy, just a slow cruise around the block to savor the moment, to let the reality sink in. I pulled up to my house, shutting off the car and just staring at it. I truly have it. As I opened the door to get out, I noticed Karen standing at the edge of her lawn, arms crossed, a familiar scowl etched on her face. Karen was a character, to put it mildly. A walking, talking stereotype of suburban entitlement and thinly veiled prejudice. She always seemed to have a problem with something, whether it was the length of my grass, the volume of my music, or the audacity of me existing in her meticulously manicured world. I braced myself. I have a feeling like something bad was about to happen, but I was just hoping that I could get away without it. As I stepped out of the car, her eyes widened, then narrowed into slits of pure contempt. Well, 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 she sneered, her voice dripping with venom. Look who thinks he's someone special. I decided to ignore her. I had no intention of engaging with her brand of negativity. I turned towards my house, fumbling with my keys. Just ignore me, will you? She shrieked, her voice escalating. You think you can just flaunt that thing in my face? You don't deserve that car. People like you don't deserve nice things. I finally stopped, my hand still on the doorknob. Part of me wanted to walk away, to not give her the satisfaction of a reaction. But another part of me, the part that had fought so hard for everything I had, refused to be intimidated. Karen, I said, my voice calm but firm. This is my car. I worked hard for it. Please just leave me alone. My plea for peace seemed to only fuel her rage. Her face contorted into a mask of pure indignation. Oh, I'll leave you alone when you sell me that car, she screeched, pointing a finger at my beautiful Ferrari as if it were some sort of offensive weapon. You probably stole it anyway. I bet that doesn't even belong to you. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Karen, I bought this car legally. It's mine. I'll bet you did. Buying is one thing but stealing is another. You stole this car. She then puffed out her chest and then continued with her next statement. I'm willing to be generous. I'll give you $1 for it. I stared at her, speechless. $1? She wanted me to sell her my brand new Ferrari, the culmination of years of hard work and sacrifice, for a single dollar. Was she delusional? Was this some kind of bizarre, twisted joke? I felt a surge of anger bubbling up inside me, but I forced myself to remain calm. I knew that escalating the situation would only play into her hands. Karen, that's ridiculous, I said, shaking my head. I'm not selling you my car, especially not for $1. Now, please, just go home. Her eyes glinted with a malevolent spark. You think you're so smart, don't you? Well, we'll see about that. Maybe I should call the police and report a stolen vehicle. The words were dripping with an obvious racial tone and I was well aware of what she was doing. My blood ran cold. She wouldn't, would she? Surely, she wouldn't be that brazenly racist, that willing to weaponize the police against an innocent man simply because she didn't like the color of my skin and the fact that I owned something she didn't think I deserved. I underestimated Karen. Fine, she spat, pulling her phone out of her pocket. If you're not going to be reasonable, I'll just have to take matters into my own hands. And with that, she dialed 911. I watched in stunned silence as she spoke to the operator, her voice dripping with false distress. "Yes, I'd like to report a crime," she said, her eyes fixed on me. "My neighbor is harassing me and refusing to sell me his vehicle." I could hear the operator's voice on the other end, asking for more details, but I couldn't make out the exact words. Karen continued, her voice growing louder and more dramatic with each passing second. "He won't leave me alone. I just wanted to buy his car for $1 and they won't let me. I'm afraid for my safety. Please, send someone here immediately." The minutes that followed felt like an eternity. I stood frozen on my porch, watching Karen pace back and forth on her lawn, ranting and raving into her phone. I felt a knot of anxiety tightening in my stomach. I knew I hadn't done anything wrong, but the thought of dealing with the police, of potentially being accused of a crime I didn't commit, filled me with dread. I looked around at the few neighbors outside looking at what was going on. A few walked inside when she started yelling to not get involved. Finally, the distant wail of sirens pierced the air, growing louder with each passing second. Karen perked up, a triumphant smirk spreading across her face. "They're here," she exclaimed, waving her arms wildly as a police cruiser pulled up to the curb. Two officers emerged from the vehicle, their expressions serious and professional. One was a young woman with a stern demeanor, the other a middle-aged man with a weary look in his eyes. They approached Karen cautiously, their hands hovering near their holsters. "Ma'am, we received a call about a disturbance," the female officer said, her voice calm but authoritative. "Can you tell us what's going on?" Karen launched into her fabricated story, her voice trembling with feigned emotion. "This man," she said, pointing at me with a dramatic flourish, "is harassing me. He refuses to sell me his car for a reasonable price, and he's been making threats against me." The officers turned their attention to me, their eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Sir, is everything all right?" the male officer asked, his voice measured. "This woman is lying," I said, my voice shaking with anger and frustration. "I haven't threatened her. She demanded that I sell her my car for $1, and when I refused, she called the police." Karen gasped dramatically. "That's not true. He's trying to twist the story. I was just trying to be nice to him, and he's treating me like this." The officers exchanged a skeptical glance. They had clearly dealt with situations like this before. The female officer spoke up, her voice firm. "Ma'am, we need you to calm down and tell us the truth. Are you saying that this man threatened you?" Karen hesitated for a moment, her eyes darting back and forth between me and the officers. "Well, not exactly threatened," she stammered. "But he was very aggressive and intimidating. I felt like I was in danger." The smell of new leather still filled the cab, a sweet, expensive fragrance that was a constant reminder of what I had achieved. My brand new Ford F-150 Platinum sat gleaming in my driveway, the chrome accents catching the afternoon sun. It wasn't just a truck, it was a testament to countless late nights at the office, years of scrimping and saving, and a relentless drive to prove to myself that I could have nice things. Cooper Johnson, that was me, and I was finally in a position to treat myself. I'd always dreamed of owning a top-of-the-line pickup, something that could handle anything I threw at it, and looked damn good doing it. I'd spent weeks researching, comparing models, and poring over reviews before finally settling on this particular beast. The engine purred like a contented lion, the interior was a symphony of leather and brushed aluminum, and the technology was so advanced it felt like driving a spaceship. I'd even splurged on the premium sound system, already blasting my favorite blues tracks as I admired my purchase. I couldn't help but feel a surge of pride as I walked around the truck, running my hand along the smooth lines of its body. I felt like a king, and for once, I wasn't apologizing for it. I'd just finished washing and waxing it, taking meticulous care to ensure every inch of the paint shined, when I heard the screech of tires approaching my driveway. Glancing up, I saw Karen, my notoriously unpleasant neighbor, storming towards me, her face contorted in a way that could curdle milk. Karen had always been a thorn in my side, the kind of person who found fault in everything and everyone. She complained about the length of my grass, the volume of my music, and even the color of my trash cans. Her particular brand of microaggression was usually just annoying, designed, I suspected, to make me feel unwelcome in her neighborhood. But today, there was an intensity in her eyes that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. I braced myself, knowing that whatever was about to come out of her mouth wouldn't be pleasant. Honestly, I just wanted to enjoy my new car in peace, something I had worked hard to achieve. I figured I could ignore her, that she'd eventually leave me alone, but I knew deep down this wouldn't be the case. Especially not now. Well, Karen sneered, stopping a few feet away from me, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. Look who thinks he's somebody. A fancy truck like that? You don't belong in something like that, Cooper. You just don't. I bit back a retort, reminding myself that engaging with her was usually a waste of time and energy. I decided to try and disengage. Good afternoon to you too, Karen. I'm busy, so if you'll excuse me. I started to turn away, hoping to cut the conversation short. Hold on a minute, she snapped, her voice rising in pitch. I've been thinking. You know what would be the right thing to do? Sell me that truck. I stopped dead in my tracks, turning back to face her in disbelief. Excuse me. You heard me, she said, her eyes narrowed. Sell me that truck. I deserve it more than you do. I've lived in this neighborhood for 20 years. I understand value, you wouldn't even know where to start. It's practically insulting that you even have it. I couldn't help but chuckle, a dry, humorless sound. Karen, I bought this truck with my own money I earned. I'm not selling it to you. Oh, but you will, she insisted, stepping closer. I'm offering you a fair price. A gesture of good faith. A token of appreciation for the position I have in this neighborhood. I raised an eyebrow, waiting for the punchline. And what exactly is that price? She smirked, a truly unpleasant expression that revealed more gum than teeth. $1. That's right, Cooper. $1, and that truck is mine. I stared at her, completely speechless. I knew Karen was unreasonable, but this was beyond anything I could have imagined. You're serious? I asked, struggling to keep the incredulity out of my voice. Absolutely, she replied, her voice dripping with entitlement. It's more than you deserve for it anyway. And besides, I need a new vehicle. My old Explorer is simply not keeping up with the modern standards. It's falling apart and I need something reliable. It's the least you could do for your community. I shook my head, struggling to process the sheer absurdity of the situation. Karen, with all due respect, you're out of your mind. There's no way I'm selling you my truck for $1. Or for any amount of money, for that matter. This truck doesn't belong to the community, it belongs to me. I turned around, hoping to end this ridiculous exchange. I was beginning to think I was in some sort of nightmare. That's when I heard her shrill voice behind me, laced with fury. Fine. You want to play it that way? Then you leave me no choice. I had no idea what she meant by that, until I heard her pull out her phone. I watched in disbelief as Karen held her phone to her ear, her voice dripping with false urgency. 911, what's your emergency? The operator's voice crackled from the device. Yes, I need to report a theft in progress. Karen declared, her eyes fixed on me. My neighbor, Cooper Johnson, is trying to steal my truck. He's refusing to give it back and trying to drive away with it. My jaw dropped. Stealing her truck. This was beyond ridiculous. This was outrageous. Karen, stop it. I yelled, trying to reason with her. This is my truck. I have the title, the registration, everything. She ignored me, continuing her fabricated story to the 911 operator. He's being very aggressive, I'm afraid for my safety. Please send someone immediately. I think he's on drugs or something." She began to feign tears, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue she seemed to produce from nowhere. The whole performance was disgusting. I knew I had to do something, but I was paralyzed by the sheer audacity of her lie. I couldn't believe she was actually going to go through with this. "You're lying!" I shouted, hoping someone would hear me. "This is my truck. She's making this up." Karen just glared at me, a smug expression on her face. "He's threatening me now. Please hurry," she cried into the phone before ending the call. I stood there, dumbfounded, as she put her phone back in her pocket. "What did you just do?" I asked, my voice trembling with anger. "I did what I had to do," she replied, her voice cold and hard. "You wouldn't listen to reason. Now you're going to learn a lesson about respecting your betters." I felt a surge of rage building inside me, but I knew that I couldn't let myself lose control. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. "This is insane," I said, shaking my head. "You can't just call the police and make up lies like that." "Oh, I can," she said with a wicked smile. "And I just did. Now, we wait. I have everything to lose here, and I'm prepared to do anything to get what I feel I deserve." I knew that arguing with her was pointless. She was clearly determined to make my life miserable, and she wasn't going to back down. All I could do was wait for the police to arrive and try to explain the situation to them. But even as I thought those words, a knot of fear tightened in my stomach. I knew that as a black man, my word might not be enough against the word of a white woman, especially not in this town. It didn't take long for the police to arrive, sirens blaring and lights flashing. 2 officers, a man and a woman, jumped out of their patrol car and approached us, their faces grim. "Ma'am, you made a call about a theft in progress," the male officer asked Karen. "Yes, officer," she cried, pointing at me dramatically. "This man, Cooper Johnson, is trying to steal my truck. I told him I was willing to sell it to him for what I feel is appropriate for the positions we both find ourselves, and he simply got angry. I have no idea where I went wrong, but I'm glad you are here to assist." The officer turned to me, his expression suspicious. "Is this true, sir?" he asked. "No, officer, it's not." I protested, my voice rising in panic. "This is my truck. I just bought it. I have the paperwork to prove it." "He's lying," Karen interjected, her voice shrill. "He's always causing trouble in this neighborhood. I'm sure that's why he was driving at top speed down the street. I'm not sure if he has any licenses, which is why I'd like a full investigation into the matter." The female officer stepped forward, her eyes narrowed. "Sir, can you produce the registration and title for this vehicle?" I rushed into my house, grabbed the documents and handed them to her, my hands shaking. She examined them carefully, her face unreadable. "These appear to be in order," she said, handing the documents back to me. "However, ma'am is claiming that you stole the vehicle from her." "But it's not true," I exclaimed, my voice cracking with desperation. "She's making it up. She doesn't even drive a truck. She drives the old Explorer I was hearing her mention earlier." The male officer sighed, shaking his head. "Sir, we have to investigate this claim. We can't just take your word for it. Ma'am mentioned there had been some verbal argument too, can you confirm this?" "Yes, we argued," I admitted, "but only because she wanted to buy my truck for $1. I told her no, and that's when she called you." "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to step away from the vehicle," the male officer said, his voice firm. "What? Why?" I asked, my heart pounding in my chest. "We need to question you further," he replied. "And until we can determine what happened here, you're going to have to come with us." "You're arresting me?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Sir, we're just detaining you for questioning," the officer said, avoiding my gaze. "Please, don't make this difficult." Before I could protest further, the officers placed me in handcuffs and led me to their patrol car. As I sat in the back of the car, watching my dream truck disappear from view, I felt a wave of despair wash over me. Karen had won. She had used her privilege and her lies to turn my joy into a nightmare. As the patrol car pulled away from my house, I saw Mrs. Davison, my other neighbor, hurrying towards the scene. She was carrying her phone, her face etched with concern. Mrs. Davison had always been friendly and kind, and I knew she wouldn't stand for injustice. I just hoped she could do something to help me. Mrs. Davison approached the officers, who were still talking to Karen. "Officers, I have something you need to see," she said, her voice clear and firm. "I have security camera footage from my house that shows everything that happened." The officers turned to her, their expressions curious. "What does the footage show, ma'am?" the female officer asked. "It shows Karen approaching Cooper, demanding he sell her his truck for $1, and then calling 911 when he refused," Mrs. Davison explained. "It clearly shows that Cooper never tried to steal her truck, and that Karen was making up the whole story." Karen's face paled as she heard Mrs. Davison's words. "That's not true," she shrieked. "She's lying. That footage must be fake." The male officer turned to Karen, his expression hardening. "Ma'am, are you saying that you made a false report to 911? Karen stammered, trying to backtrack. I was just upset," she said weakly. "I didn't mean for things to go this far. I was overwhelmed with a sense of frustration." The female officer sighed, shaking her head. "Ma'am, making a false report to 911 is a serious offense. We're going to have to take you into custody." As the officers started to place Karen in handcuffs, she snapped. "This is all your fault," she screamed, lunging at Mrs. Davison. "You stupid old busybody. You ruined everything." Karen swiped at Mrs. Davison with her hand, catching the older woman on the arm. Mrs. Davison cried out in pain, stumbling backward. The officers reacted instantly, pulling Karen away from Mrs. Davison. "Ma'am, calm down," the male officer shouted, struggling to restrain her. "Get off me!" Karen screamed, thrashing wildly. "I'll sue you all. You can't do this to me." Karen continued to fight, kicking and screaming, making it impossible for the officers to control her. Finally, the female officer made a decision. She pulled out her taser and aimed it at Karen. "Ma'am, you need to calm down and cooperate," she warned. "If you don't, I will be forced to use this taser." Karen ignored the warning, continuing to fight. The female officer had no choice. She fired the taser, and Karen collapsed to the ground, her body convulsing. The officers quickly secured her in handcuffs and helped her to her feet. "Ma'am, you are under arrest for making a false report to 911 and for assault," the male officer said, his voice grim. As they led Karen to the patrol car, I saw Mrs. Davison give me a small, reassuring smile. I knew that without her, I would still be sitting in jail, facing false charges. Thanks to her bravery, Karen's lies had been exposed, and she was finally being held accountable for her actions. The officers took Karen away, the sirens wailing in the distance. Mrs. Davison came over to me, her arm bruised but her spirit strong. "I'm so sorry you had to go through that, Cooper," she said, her voice filled with sympathy. "That woman has been causing trouble in this neighborhood for far too long. I'm glad she's finally getting what she deserves." "Thank you, Mrs. Davison," I said, my voice choked with emotion. "You saved me. I don't know what I would have done without you." "Nonsense," she said, patting my arm. "We neighbors have to stick together. And besides, I wasn't about to let that woman get away with her lies. Especially not when I knew you were innocent." The officers returned shortly after, apologizing profusely and uncuffing me. They explained that they had been obligated to investigate Karen's claim, but that the security footage had completely exonerated me. They even offered to help me file charges against Karen for making a false report and for assault. As I stood there, watching the patrol car disappear down the street, I felt a mix of relief and anger. Relief that I was free, and anger that I had been subjected to such blatant racism and injustice. But I also felt a sense of gratitude. Gratitude for Mrs. Davison's courage, and gratitude for the fact that the truth had ultimately prevailed. Later that day, after I had calmed down and filed my report, I finally got back into my truck. I turned on the engine, the familiar purr a comforting sound. I took a deep breath, savoring the smell of new leather. The events of the day had shaken me, but they hadn't broken me. I was still Cooper Johnson, and I was still the proud owner of my dream truck. And I would never let anyone, not even Karen, take that away from me. I drove off, blasting my favorite blues music, the sound filling the air with a defiant joy. The road ahead might not be easy, but I was ready for whatever challenges it might bring. After all, I had survived Karen and her lies. I could survive anything.